Hello everyone, welcome back today for part 2 of my setup tutorial videos. We're here after the summer break of the Belgium Grand Prix, all the way through to Abu Dhabi. If you didn't see part 1, I'd highly recommend you go and check it out. It covers all of the tracks from Australia to Hungary, and now we're here for the remaining races. I hope you enjoyed part 1. And now we're here for part 2 of the dry setups around the F1 2019 tracks. So here we go, let's kick things off straight away with Belgium. Now, Belgium, I use 2.6 wings. I know some people change it from 2.6 up to 4.6, but I think 2.6 has that decent balance between high speed and downforce in the corners, especially Erosion Radion. You need a good run for the long straight, leave it like, you don't want too much downforce for the straight, but you want enough downforce for the corners later on in the track. There's quite a few tricky medium, high speed and low speed corners around this track. There's bus stop chicane, Pouon, etc. Moving on to transmissions then, we've got 50% and 67%, suspension and geometry, right, left. Suspension then 134, 10, 4, 4. Brakes 76% and 54%, and the tyres at 25 and 22.7. That was the Belgium setup for you guys. Moving on now to Italy, we've got 2.2 aerodynamics, tempered speed. You don't need any downforce. However, I have it on 2.2 because you do need that little bit of downforce. You've got turn 1 and 2, and then sector 2 is quite not technical, but you've got a few corners there, so you want to leave some downforce for them corners, but other than that it's just straights all the way. 50%, 70% on the transmissions. Suspension and geometry, right, left. That's going to be quite common in my setups. Suspension 126, 912. Brakes 80% and 56%, and then the tyres 23.4 and 22.3. That was Italy. We now got Singapore, and if you hadn't guessed it, 8 wings. Obviously a downforce, a highly downforce required street circuits. You don't need too much downforce because you do need some straight line speed for the straights, but 8 is a nice balance. 50% and 60% in the transmissions. Suspension and geometry, right, left. Once again, suspension now 336, 745. Brakes 80 and 54%, and then the tyres we've got 23 and 20.3. Try not to get that confused right there. Alright, so we move on now to Russia. Almost got through all the dry tracks actually, only a few more to go. Russia now. 3.6 wing. 50. Oh, I was going to say Russia is quite similar to Australia in a way. You could say you've got the start finish straight, quite long straight. You've got a few straights, but then you also got some medium speed corners in the middle, scattered around the track. So 3.6 I find is a nice balance. Transmission 50%, 70%. Suspension and geometry, right, left. Suspension 132, 1012. Brakes 80% and 55%, and then the tyres 24.6 and 21.9. That was the Russian setup. We now move on to Japan. Japanese Suzuka. We're here with 6-7 wings. Obviously a fair bit of downforce is required for the obvious S's section in sector 1, but you want to leave some straight line speed for the start finish straight, and obviously the straights before and after 130R. Transmission 60% and 70%. Suspension and geometry, I don't know why I call it suspension and geometry there, but suspension geometry, right, left as usual. Suspension 434, 1034. Brakes 80% and 56%, and tyres 24.2, 21.9. So that was the Russia setup, though that was Japan. I do apologise. We now move on to the Japan short track, not the default one, but 6 wings, 75 on the transmission, default suspension geometry, default suspension, default brakes, and default tyres. I feel like the default setup, just like the French Grand Prix, the default setup works really well round the Japanese short track. So moving on now to the Mexican Grand Prix. 2 6 wings, the same as Belgium. Obviously the long straight plus the tricky corners, sector 2 especially, the constant left and then right and then left and then right and then left going. There may have been too many, but I'm not. We'll move over from that. 90%, 75% in the transmission, suspension geometry 2.5, 1.2, 0.05 and 0.26. Suspension 234, 1133. Brakes at 80% and 55%, and the tyres all the way to the right and 22.7. So almost at the end then. We've got a few more tracks to go with USA. Next, 4-5 wings. Transmission 55% and 65%. Suspension and suspension geometry right left. Suspension 224, 534. Brakes at 80% and 56%, and then the tyres at 24.6 and 22.3. The USA short track now almost done for part 2, the dry tracks. 6-5 wings, barely any straights in this track. You've only got the start finish straight and half of the back straight of the usual track, so you need the downforce for the other corners. Transmission 65% for both. Suspension geometry right left. Suspension 3-3-10, 8-3-4. Brakes at 85% and 54%. And the tyres at 23 and 21.1. So 2 more tracks to go. Brazil next. We've got 4-5 wings for the Sao Paulo track. 65 and 60% on the transmission. Right left suspension geometry. Suspension 3-4-3, 11-2-4. Brakes at 80% and 55%. And then the tyres at 24.2 and 21.9. Now the final track out of the dry tracks, the final track on the calendar. We've got Abu Dhabi, 3-7 wings. Transmission 69% and 63%. Suspension geometry right left. Suspension at 1-2-4, 11-3-4. Brakes at 80% and 54%. And last but not least, tyres are at 23.4 and 21.1. And that is it for all of the dry tracks on the F1 2019 calendar. I hope you find all of them to be useful. Please do adjust them to your driving style. They're just my preferences for every track, but you know, they can be adjusted if you want more or less wings, changing the brakes, etc. But stay tuned for a wet setup where, I'll be completely honest, some of them aren't mine, but I've taken them and adjusted them, so I hope they're useful for you. But this has been part 2 of the setup video. Make sure you go check out part 1. I'll leave each track in the description below, what time they're at, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.